¿Qué tal? Bienvenidos a otro episodio de Empodérate de Chicanos por la Causa. It's a pleasure and always very fun to join this episode with my co-host, Valeria. ¿Cómo estás?
Muy bien. How are you? Very excited to be here.
I know, and I'm really excited to get started this episode as well.
Very special guest, and no further ado, introduce Jose Martinez. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thank you.
Executive Vice President of Chicanos por la Causa Economic Development.
Yes.
We got the title.
Yes, that's the question.
I was just checking with
the answer is
you.
yes. Did I pass?
It's the first test.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. You did pass.
Yeah.
Where is your family from? Where did you grow up?
Yeah, so I grew up in West Phoenix. I went to Trevor Brown High School, so I'm a West Sider. My mom, she grew up in Glendale, aquí en El Valle, and my dad's from a little pueblito, rancho cerca Agua Prieta.
Aquí.
And he grew up in Tucson.
I had no idea que era de Agua Prieta. How was growing up? I heard that you did a summer in Guadalajara and you really immersed yourself in the culture and wanting to learn more about your background.
Yeah.
How was that?
I did do summer in Guadalajara. I think, I tell everybody, and hopefully my daughters will follow that path as well. But, attending the university, it's a time to those are formative years, for a young person. And so the opportunity to, travel, live, in another country, I took the opportunity. I was on the 6-year plan. So when I started as a freshman at ASU, I met a lot of smart people who were going in their 5th year. And they said they were very apologetic. Oh, it's going to take me 5 years to graduate. And I figured, well, these smart people are taking 5 years. Looks like it's going to take me 6. So I planned on it. And it gave me a lot of opportunity to take the slow and steady pace. And I had an opportunity to do a semester abroad. And that was really an awesome experience, for sure.
¿Y aprendiste el español para comunicarte con tus suegros?
No, pues sí, mira, ya con el español ya lo entendía todo, pero fue en esa experiencia que pues tenía que salir a hablar en español y no más escuchar y contestar en
Sí.
inglés, pues. Y pues así mejoró mi idioma la idioma. Yeah. So
See, I think that's the best way to learn a new language. Personally, for me, my parents grew up, I only spoke Spanish.
yeah.
I don't know why they didn't teach me English, and they just put me in pre-K and said, learn it. So that's how I learned. So I'm pretty sure that's how you learned Spanish.
Yeah. I had the benefit of growing up with it, right? And so then it just had to turn into communicating, outward. And so that's, I think that was my experience. My dad's was much different, right? So he came over only knowing, Spanish, and in those days, they got it out of you with the ruler. And so our parents with my siblings taught us English first, right? For that reason. But it's the ongoing debate between my mom and dad. 'Cause she grew up in Glendale and she spoke mostly Spanish here, locally. But
You have 2 beautiful daughters,
Yes.
and your beautiful wife. How does that shape the way your leadership, being a girl dad?
Mexican men often get, stereotyped as being the machista, and, but my dad wasn't. My mom was a really strong woman. I had an older sister, and then in the formative years at the university, I was around strong women and, and a machista and engaged and understanding, more about, the issues. So I think when, having 2 daughters, I think in a strong wife who's, highly educated and highly engaged, se me hace fácil, right? I think it's just, opening up and listening and understanding that, at the end of the day, there's opportunities that I'm afforded as a man that are different for women, and we just have to acknowledge that, right? And figure out how we make the changes. So, for my daughters, right? What can we do to make this world a better, more, a better place for them, as they go through their professional, they go on to college and so forth. So.
Exactly. Awesome. And when we first met, I don't know if you remember, I was fresh here. It was my first week. And you were telling me a little bit about your daughter, about how she, she wants to go to ASU and become just like her dad. But then she's like, wait, but maybe I want to go over there to DC. What has that kind of been like to, to hopefully, and I would hope, to kind of see, your oldest daughter kind of leave the nest?
Yeah. No, thanks for asking. I hate talking about myself. I love talking about my daughters. So I appreciate the transition, right? So, no, mija, she's a junior this year. She's thinking about where she's going to go. We took a trip. She visited Georgetown University. She's trying to figure out her way, right? And she might go away to college. She might, stay here at ASU. We're prepared to support her. And whatever she decides, right? And so whatever's best for her. We're not trying to push her, and we're also not trying to, have her settle for something that she doesn't want. So she's got a strong mind of her own. We've always, I think reinforced that, and and so we're not there yet. So we're not thinking about her leaving, but we're supportive if she decides to.
Exactly. I feel like as a dad, it must feel a little hard. I know my dad had a rough time because I'm also the oldest daughter, and I know that every so often I get those texts of like, "I miss you. When are you gonna come back?" I'm like, "Never."
That's right. Where are you from?
I'm from El Paso.
Oh, that's right.
So I'm like 6 hours away. So and now my brother lives here actually in Phoenix. So now my parents are empty nesters, and they're like, "Oh, like what do we do now?"
Well, they just need to move here.
No,
they just need to move here.
Thinking about it. Parece estás preocupada.
Yeah, no, they've been thinking. My dad actually had a job interview here, and I was like, I hope it doesn't go well. I'm like, good job, good luck. And I'm like, hopefully it doesn't get the job. Because what is it? The heart grows fonder, like when there's like distance. So I'm like, okay, stay home.
To feel more independent.
You say that now, but
right?
If your parents were to move, you'd appreciate it.
So speaking of leadership, I remember you talk about your machista days, right? A lot of leaders out in the community, right? That they were advocates, and you can tell who was a machista during their college years, and then who's not. Pero en general, how that early advocacy interaction paved the way for you to end up CPLC.
Yeah, well, I have to say that the years at the university, being a machista really taught me that it wasn't about me anymore, right? It wasn't about getting an education and getting a good job. That there was, that we have, issues that we need to work through in our communities, and we need to support, that there's, that we need to advocate for the communities at large, and for, the community I grew up in, right? And so, so that really changed my thinking of just going to university to get an education and get a job. But so when the time came, right, I didn't know what I was gonna be. I'm not a really good planner. So life, I feel like I've overachieved my own expectations. And so, I didn't have a job lined up, and it was just, I learned of an opportunity at Chicanos por la Causa, and I thought, well, boy, I think that fits from, what I want to do, make a difference, make impact in my community. It wasn't about just getting a job anymore. So, that's how I started. First job out of college, and I've been here ever since.
And that was in prevention services, after-school programs.
I started, at the time, Pete Garcia was our president and CEO. He hired me, and I started actually in the grant writing and supporting the events. And after a couple of years, I moved into really where I wanted to be, which is in the community and doing. Working with youth and dropout drug prevention, working with families. We do home visits, and really engaging with the families in a way that was different than I think most programs, offered at the time.
And then IT, and then economic development. I remember hearing of that transition, and you and I had that conversation, and it was completely different, right? One from the next. And just how did you manage?
Yeah, no, I was part of the experiment at CPLC where we were rotating, rotating leaders, throughout the organization. And so, I remember the conversation with my wife when I took the job, and she says, well, what does your job description say? And as well, we don't have a job description yet, but I'll take a leap of faith. I feel better not knowing and trying to make a position what makes sense, over time than to be fixated on a job description. Right. But, I think that's just my nature. So, I took on the role of IT for a year and I transitioned, I transitioned a number of times. Throughout the time at CPLC.
I remember that you said, I'm just gonna, research about this, and we can make that work. Let's figure it out. Yeah. And then you surrounded yourself with people that knew, right? Were already part of the team. Yeah. And you were just guiding them through that process as well, but at the same time doing your own research and making sure that you knew the area.
Yeah, look, I take the opportunity, and I did rotate a number of different times throughout the organization, but I took the opportunity. I think oftentimes we have people in any organization that are ready to take that next step, and my role was really just to cultivate that, right? And so we had Robert, at the time that was working in the IT department, and and over a period of time, it became clear, that he would be the individual that would transition into that role when I left. But it was an opportunity to give people more, more responsibility, see how they took that and what they did with it. And so I think, I appreciate, the opportunities I've had in the organization where they've put something in front of me that was, bigger and more than I had the experience to do. But we found our way, right?
Absolutely.
And what has been like the highlight, out of these 27 years?
I really see the wins as, when we have people in the organization move up, right? When, through mentorship, I really love seeing other people succeed and move up in the organization, take on more responsibility. It's where I naturally fit the leadership, out in front, the attention is just not me. But I think there's room for all different kinds of people in leadership. And so for the shy kid that I started off with is, it's still in me today. And so, I'm happier to put someone else out in front and give them opportunities to grow than to try to take the credit.
So speaking of that, you currently oversee real estate operations, lending, all the economic, obviously, impact, which is the majority in very large projects that eventually helps fund the majority of our nonprofit programs, right? And so your responsibility is huge to the sustainability of the organization overall across, 8 different markets and states with nearly 2,000 team members. But speaking of that, we had a conversation about what leadership looks like, right? Yeah. A typical leader, you see it up there in the front, speaking, feeling comfortable speaking in front of people.
That's what they say.
Right?
Yeah.
And so,
that's what I've heard.
But there are a lot of a different side, right? There are different personalities in leadership, right? And sometimes innate nature. Mm-hmm. And some of us could be introverts at some time. How did you manage, or where is your advice for those leaders up and coming and as they see that perhaps as a weakness?
I think everybody who's an introvert finds themselves in places where they feel incredibly comfortable with family, with friends, And I think it's just a matter of making the world a smaller place, just, one thing at a time. They got to push themselves to get out there, right? So a rule I had, when I was in college was if I was anything I was invited to, I would show up, and I had to show up. So if I was invited to a reception with professors, if I was invited to different events, I would show up because I was pushing myself, right? To take risk, to be in uncomfortable situations. And the world just gets to be a little bit smaller because you find that the more things you go to, you meet somebody that you would otherwise, that you already knew, and you didn't know that you were going to see someone you knew there. But yeah, I think, if I go way back, I think I just, I faked it, I put myself into a character and I would say I'm going to be an outgoing person today. What would an outgoing person say? What would they do? And, make jokes and start conversations and get the other person talking, right? And so that's how I, found how to manage through this, right? So, and Maria Jesus, that well. You've been trying to get me to do this thing for a couple years, and I keep nominating people that I think would be better.
And now you're fitting the role of a guest, of a podcast
and
guest.
Now I'm in my first podcast. Thank you very much. Off the bucket list that wasn't on the list. I'll add it and check it off now. So thank you.
You have to fake it until you make it, right? And I feel like that's a lot for for people that are figuring out their way in college. I feel like a lot of people, you're freshly 18, and you're trying to figure out what's the next step. And I feel like college, you kind of have to just figure it out, what your next step, your career is. What would you give maybe a piece of advice to 18, 19-year-old Jose?
What I tell 18, 19, I'd say like, hey, don't worry about it. It all worked out. It all worked out in the end. I compare it to my daughter's experience. She seems to be stressed about what college she's going to get into. She seems to be stressed about, getting the best grades, being the most competitive, making sure that, and getting engaged in everything she can, and I look at it and I think that's a lot of stress for an 18-year-old or 17-year-old now. I didn't have that stress. I pushed the envelope of what I thought I could do, in terms of, going on to university, even when my school counselor said that, I probably, ASU wasn't the place for me, that I would be lost in a big university and that I didn't have the academic talents to get through it. Right. So, but I didn't have the stress, right? I just took the risk. And so I would say that I think, young people today, they have a little bit too much stress, and I think they don't have to worry about it if they just keep making the effort. Things are going to work out. Maybe not how they planned, but they'll work out in the end. Yeah.
Speaking of, right, being there, and many of them may need somebody to be able to share this stress and being able to walk them through there. And that's been something that has come very natural for you, of being a mentor throughout the last few years. We just had a conversation about well-known local attorney, and he just out of the blue reached out in this event to our president and CEO, and he said that you changed his life. So you've been mentoring for a long time. What was that? Had that experience, and what that makes you feel like after all these years, you had no clue that you had made such a huge impact on someone's life.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's Maria Jesus, what, touch,
that's exactly how we feel.
No, there's, when you're able to make an impact on someone's life, it's a good thing, Yeah, I don't feel like the kind of guy that's going around, changing people's lives, right? But when it comes back around, yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, it's amazing because being part of and it's something that we share with you without, having been part at any on that development or that opportunity to be able to impact the lives of so many. I mean, we do that through the staff and providing the services every day at CPLC, but being able to have a moment and then realizing that it comes at a pivotal moment for our community, and that having the support that they need at the right time, it's many times critical. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's, if anything, what is the legacy that we leave? It's did you help the next person? Did you help your neighbor? Did you help the young, a young person? Did you mentor? Right. I don't think I'm actively, seeking out mentorship opportunities. I think just life introduces you to people, and you give them, the best advice, and you provide them support, and then where they take it from there is where they take it. I mean, I deserve no credit to, the folks that I've mentored along the way. They found their way. They found the support, right, when they needed it. So, yeah.
And so you hope that then your daughters can find somebody like you then.
Oh, hopefully, better. I mean, yeah, they already have me, right? So, they're great. They'll do fine. I think it's set your sights out, but then be ready for life to happen, right?
Yeah. I think that the easiest way is just everything, how you said, everything's gonna work out. Everything, what is it called? Falls into place. Everything happens, for a reason. And sometimes you don't really understand the reason at the moment, but then, you realize that that's where you were supposed to go. So I think that that's very, very beautiful.
Right. That's life. It throws us curves, right? But you've I think you just got to look at to be the best that you could be in every situation, right? And so can't take the easy way out, right? So sometimes it's tough, it's hard work, and you don't reach the results that you were looking for, but the journey, teaches you the next time, right? And so failure is just a part of life, right? But I think some folks, I think they struggle with, and they stress out about failure, but it's just a part of life.
And you're talking a little bit about the curves that life throws you. What is it, maybe like a piece of advice that maybe you would want to give somebody that's right now kind of figuring out what their next step is in their career? They're kind of stuck. They kind of just don't know what to do next, or how to kind of find motivation again.
Yeah, I can only speak to my experience, right? And I think it's like do more, right? I think it's particularly for folks that are in a position where they want to move up, right? And I think sometimes people get a little fixated on that. But I think it's, and I've given this advice to people, make the position you have more than what it is today, and people will recognize it, And if they don't recognize it, then, change, because if the people around you don't recognize the talents that you bring and that you're doing more, somebody else will, right? But you want to be in a culture where, that's expected or appreciated. And so I would say that, for folks that are in a position and they're ready to move on to something else, and they don't see the opportunities, I think they need to look inward and see what kind of opportunities they could make with the position they have, take on, additional responsibilities, lead, a new project, or, wherever they're at, certainly that organization, that company would appreciate that. And if it doesn't, it's time to move on.
In the economic development world,
yes,
what does your day look like?
Oh my gosh! I mean, every day's different. I don't have
that, huh?
Yeah, you hear that.
I don't have a routine.
Myself too.
Everybody at CPLC is that way.
I mean, I happen to, 27 years in a dynamic organization that's been ever changing. I'd say that I've had to reinvent, the work that I do several times over. Prestamos in the small business lending space. We've gone through several, reinventions in terms of how we do the work. I think it's the nature of how you do the work, right? And today, the challenges of affordable housing. How do we get, how do we build new housing? How do we preserve, housing? These are the things that, get me up in the morning trying to figure out, how do we solve some of these issues, right? This is why I'm here 27 years, because this organization has given me, the opportunity to help, problem solve and drive, the lines of business that we have. And what an awesome place to be, right? At Chicanos por la Causa, not only do I get to make impact, be part of driving the mission forward, but at the same time, do that in a way through the small business lending, through the affordable housing development, do that in a way that also brings back additional resources to the organization. So we can do that, we can make an impact, and we can make a surplus in terms of a small profit that then goes back to the organization in ways to support the social services when we have gaps in funding. So that's really been, at the heart of, what I love about the organization, and the opportunity it's afforded me. And then, my role is to how to replicate that for others, right? So how can we give, opportunities for folks to step up and take on additional responsibilities and projects and further develop and create solutions for some of the issues that we're trying to make an impact on.
Exactly. Very, very cool. And, talking a little bit about Prestamos, your anniversary is coming up, 25 years of the CDFI certification. What has that been like? You were here way before they got that.
Yeah. So, way before. I've been here 27 years. We're coming up on 25-year anniversary, but it's an exciting time, right? And I could tell you that when I came on to the Prestamos team, right? So much of my experience has been that, I'm the guy added to the team, right? And so when I came on, started working with Teresa, who's got, long time experience in doing this work. I mean, it was at a time when I felt like, we could do so much more. We were a really small CDFI. We're doing a handful of loans a year. But, again, just like the IT experience, I didn't know lending. I never worked at a bank. I don't even bank at a bank. I've got a credit union. And so we had to learn it, right? But I had relied on the team that was there, and then, and added good people to the team. And, we've come a long way from, a small CDFI to, one that is significantly impactful in serving, small businesses in multiple states, and lending, $25 million a year. I mean, it's from where we started, or what I started with it, and 25 years ago where it was. We've come a long way, but that's to the credit of a good team working hard and really trying to figure out how we make an impact, support small businesses.
And through different cycles, right? In the history and the economy as well, to being able to be there, have our doors open, to be able to provide the resources to business entrepreneurs at the time that they needed most. And there was a specific time throughout the cycles for Prestamos, and that was through the PPP program, a federal program that was able to provide a lot of help throughout the country.
Well, if you look at just our CDFI, Prestamos, right, if you go back during the toughest times, during the Great Recession, during COVID, right, you find that this is a time when the banks, they find it more difficult to provide credit to small businesses. It's the nature of the way banks are going to work. And for CDFIs, it is a time for us to step up. And so we stepped up during the Great Recession. That was some of the largest growth years for us in terms of finding ways to support small businesses, provide them loans and technical assistance through some tough times. And COVID was much larger and broader, but we did the same. We acted in terms of meeting the mission, and that was a time when the whole world saw that small businesses, or at least in the United States, that small businesses really drive the economy, and what can we do to save jobs and save these small businesses. And so, PPP was another, tool that we used to, lend in all 50 states, and to support these small businesses that really, mom and pop, really the smallest of the small businesses and help them survive.
And I realized, while I was doing my own little research, realized that in Arizona, about 99% of businesses are small businesses. Thought that was really, really cool.
Yeah, I would tell you. I mean, I think it's an exciting time because I think young folks really think about being an entrepreneur more so than ever before. And I shared a little bit earlier before the interview started. My daughter, is a teenager and is trying to start her own mobile bookstore, right? And so that entrepreneurial spirit, right, of being your own boss and starting your business, I think it's infectious, and I think young people get it. And so we're seeing more startups, more than ever, right? At a time when the economy is kind of in a different place, right? It's a hard economy to read, but people are taking risks, they're taking chances, and they're building on the economy, through small business growth. And they're hiring people, and our work is to support those small businesses that are in low and economic areas where there's that need investment, right? That need job growth.
In addition to the anniversary of Prestamos, then we also have the grand opening pretty soon of another apartment community in South Phoenix. Long in the works for a while to be able to provide housing in that community. A lot of work behind the scenes as well from your team.
Yeah, very exciting. 160 units that we're leasing up right now. We've got another project on 25th Street in Bell that is soon going to be completed by the end of the year. We're building affordable housing in the small community of Miami, or Miami, Arizona, and so it's rewarding work, right? We're building new units of good quality housing for families that that need the housing, and so
absolutely. So what do you do for fun, Jose?
I work. That's my hobby. I get up early in the morning on Saturday. I go to Starbucks. I read.
Don't be boring.
I am
there
boring.
Must be something else that you're not sharing today.
I've tried to find hobbies that I could do just to be able to get past the icebreaker things that when I go to a training or something, they do an icebreaker and they tell you what's your hobby, what do you do. So I've tried to find a hobby just to be able to answer that question. I don't have hobbies, I've got I'm a part-time Uber driver for my kids. I was a full-time, but now my oldest is driving herself.
Good for you.
So now I've moved down to part-time Uber driver for my girls.
Get demoted.
I'm working on a horse trailer, turning it into a mobile bookstore. That's my hobby. I'm sorry I'm not more exciting.
So you could say your hobby is like spending time with your daughters.
Okay, or that's my hobby. My hobby is being a dad. My hobby is tell me what what we're doing this weekend. What obligations I have. You can feel free to cut this part out of the interview. I have no hobbies. That's the answer to the question. I have no hobbies.
Well, what is your favorite thing to do with your daughters other than driving them around?
I think like a lot of families, we watch movies together. We stream movies at home, right? Introduce them to movies that we loved way back in the day. The follow-up question is going to be which movie.
Yes, I can't wait to hear.
I'm trying to remember. I mean, what we did do is we went through the entire Marvel, series and that took a long time. But then we go back to like some of these classics like Stand and Deliver.
I watched it for the first one in 7th grade.
Yes. Yeah. So introducing, and my wife's really good about introducing our daughters to something that we think that was a part of our lives, and so we want to introduce it to them, right? Kind of like music, but in the case of movies that we saw at a certain age. So
your last advice, I know we've asked you a lot of advice from pero yo ya voy a uno en particular. You always recommend 3 things.
I think that is an important thing. We always need to be ready to speak to what, what's important, right? And so we should never get caught off guard and not knowing what the 3 things that are important. So me, what's important today is, the excitement of the new housing that we've been building, right? The opportunity to the next project being, new housing in Nogales for seniors, right? That's a really exciting thing, and to let people know, right? I always tell young people, put everything out into the world, because you never know who's listening, right? So for whoever's listening if you've sat all the way through this much of my interview, we need, additional funding to get projects done, right? And so we've got a great project in Mesa, affordable housing project in Mesa, but we're still trying to fill the gap, right? Financial gap that only can be filled through additional grants, right? And so, you got to put it out into the world. If you're looking for a job, you got to tell people. If you're looking for new opportunities, people need to know that, because you never know who you're going to meet and what their connection is going to be to it. So that is the advice I give. I don't always take it, but that's the advice I give. Always be ready with 3 things. Did I cover 3? Did I hit 2?
I think you 2.5.
But so much. It's the problem is there's so much you've already asked me about the 25th anniversary of Brasamas and how important that is and how exciting that's going to be to celebrate
helping
here
your
in
daughter
November.
to launch her business.
Everywhere I go, my daughter's launching a mobile bookstore. She's taking donations for parents who have books for early readers. She's really focusing on it because she loves to read. She got turned on to read, in elementary school, and she realizes that it's important to help other kids, get excited about reading. And in a day and age when, people are just, on social media and reading short little things, that, that reading is a skill that's important, and it's important to my daughter, and she loves it, and she's building a business out of it. It's also her senior project. So books, we're looking for donated books. See Maria Jesus.
Sí. I'll have some for you.
And she'll connect to the books.
Ya tengo a stack ready for you. Thank you so much, Jose. Seriously, I know it's been a while, and I know it took a lot, and I know you're super busy, and that you can be anywhere. But you decided to step into CPLC's Girls Leadership Academy Media Studio.
Yeah, what an exciting place. This is great. This is great. Yeah. No. Thanks for the invitation, Maria Jesus. Hopefully I didn't disappoint, because I'm only here.
You did great.
I'm only here para cumplir, a promise that I made to you that someday we would do this, and this day came, and here we are. And
yes.
So, find the 2 minutes of good, good interview, put it out into the world, and bury the rest, por favor. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you so much. Thank you, Valeria. It's been it's an awesome episode. We'll see you next time on Empodérate de Chicanos por la Causa.